Okay, guys, we're back here with the Masters Finals. We have Sebastian Inks back with his Mega Gardevoir Fairy deck against Omar Izaguirre with his Exeggutor and Empoleon deck. Um, I mean, I would think that this would be a fairly... Actually, this could be a game that could go either way. It depends on how both players start, but Omar playing a lot of energy removal cards while Sebastian's playing a very heavy amount of Xerneas to let him accelerate energies.
Very interested to see how this goes, because in theory, if he's able to draw into all the Pokemon he has, he'll be able to set up. Gardevoir has a huge amount of HP.
Right, right. Oh, he would definitely have a hard time knocking out that Gardevoir, but if you can't keep the energies on the field to power it up, it'll be difficult for him to do anything as well.
It's very easy to get stuck with an unplayable hand against Eggs, so we'll have to see. And Omar mulligan one time.
Fortunately for Sebastian, he does play the trump card to get those energies back, so we could just see a long game that results in him getting all of his energies back out on the field repeatedly.
If he can
Depends. Yeah, that's true. That's true. He does have to be able to break that blockade lock to do so. And there's a basic for Omar. There's two basics.
These two particular lists in action just yet. We saw Sebastian in the first game, but not particularly competitive games. This could really come down to consistency.
Very true. And we see Sebastian draws mulligan cards. And
this leads Xerneas, that's helpful.
Omar immediately gets a battle compressor. We'll let him get a couple more executes out. Opens up a lot of possibilities for him. Any of his discard cards immediately become more viable once he puts an execute in the discard pile.
Being able to battle compressor as a free search is something that
amazing.
makes this deck
Absolutely
really
amazing.
incredible.
And we saw that he had the Jirachi in his hand to search for that Archie's too.
So just a lot of plays right off the bat with a deck like this.
Definitely.
So we'll see him get the Archie.
Thank you. And firstly, Maria Rush.
And there is the Jirachi. And we see that Getsis in his hand. That could turn out to be a very big card in this matchup.
A card that you don't see played very often, but with the potential to swing a game.
True.
Maybe we'll just grab the Juniper here.
Okay. Now, he did have a rather large hand with a bunch of cards that he more than likely wouldn't be able to get into play.
He does have two energies.
So he'll draw out the Verbank, which he expects to get knocked out. And we see an Exeggutor hit his discard pile. We see the Plasma energies indicating that Omar plays the Genesect in his list too. Very strong disruption source. Could potentially let him bring up those Aromatisse. Or whatever gets energy put onto it, potentially drag it up with a red signal and then remove those energies from play.
Absolutely, and that should give him even more time. So we'll see here. Omar looks like he's playing a list that maybe isn't as straightforwardly consistent as other Eggs builds, but it certainly seems to have quite a few outs. So he definitely has plenty of options in this matchup. Searching his deck with the Ultra Ball. So we probably get at least one Pokemon down.
Right, and then he's likely going to end as well, so he should get some stuff going here. Totally forgot about the Florges in this matchup. That'll be a very strong attacker. As long as he has a full field, he only needs 2 energies to do that 100 damage and knock out that Exeggutor.
That, of course, is a huge advantage when his energies are going to be getting discarded. So he's got that down right off the bat. He does only have one copy.
True. True. And there's the immediate Fairy Garden to see that Verbank hit the discard pile.
Stadium War should also play a pretty big role in determining who wins this one. So without Verbank,
and we see,
the negligible
wow,
damage.
we see Sebastian throw away 2 Fairy energies as opposed to discarding that Sycamore instead and playing the N. We'll have to see if that comes back to bite him later.
He plays a fairly high count, so
I believe he plays 12 fairies and 1 DCE.
yeah.
So if he gets 2 more basics down, we'll see a Geomancy, likely targeting the Florges and Xerneas.
Then again, knowing he won't likely be able to trump card very often.
True.
So,
Puts him in a tough spot. And we saw that I believe he had 2 more energies off of that Sycamore in his hand. But he did also have the Aromatisse, so we're potentially seeing a Bright Garden next turn, depending on what Omar does. We do know that in this matchup, Florges' first attack will not be very useful. Lead searching for a supporter often gets you out of things such as Toad locks, but is absolutely useless when confronted with a blockade.
we've seen a bunch of Flareon decks on here. Obviously, those decks at least have trainer draw as something that can get out of the exile.
True. In
Gardevoir
addition to
doesn't
those
necessarily have that
Empoleons.
engine.
Yeah, no. Gardevoir is definitely supporter dependent.
There's
The
no
second
drop
Verbeck
Pokemon
comes
that doesn't
down.
run bikes.
So the lack of the Fairy Garden could actually could hinder Sebastian significantly, since he would have to discard to retreat now.
Definitely.
But if Omar doesn't have a way to do anything this turn with that Exeggutor, well, we have to see a Flare Grunt in his hand and an Ultra Ball, so he will be able to blockade this turn. Likely going to Propagate.
We'll see that.
And discard that Virizion, since it is not very useful in this matchup.
Will do nothing for him here.
Grab an Exeggutor. We'll probably see him Flare Grunt that energy off the Xerneas. If he can lock his opponent out of Geomancy next turn, it could be very, very big.
Extremely useful, and after discarding those energies, it's a realistic shot.
Seeing that Juniper discarded 2, knowing that he's going to be able to discard 1 with a Flare Grunt, definitely hurts his opponent. He has a Muscle Band to go with it. That's one of the limiting things with these Exeggutor decks, is the fact that they have such a low base damage output. People often say that Toad is weak without a Muscle Band, but I think getting tickled by Exeggutor is probably a little bit better.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see if Omar chooses to Ghetsis instead of using the Flare Grunt, potentially trying to deny his opponent the Ultra Ball for the Aromatisse, if he thinks he has it. But he instead decides to get rid of the energy and the blockade for 10. Chooses not to put the Muscle Band down. Draws another energy. Or no, draws a Gardevoir, sorry. 3 energies in his hand. I don't know if he'll be able to actually Geomancy for many more.
That's a good point.
He has 6 in play. He has 3 in his discard. Well, sorry, 6 between his hand and in play. He has 3 in his discard. So
at least get one
I
more
think he
off.
has 1 more energy in his deck now.
And now that the blockade started,
We could see a Rainbow Spear come out here next turn. Allows him to break the lock, but I mean, since Sebastian doesn't have a supporter, I don't think he minds being supporter locked.
that's true. All he really needs to do is get something big out there to attack.
And we see the Ghetsis, which is going to hit nothing.
And there's 3 energy in his head.
Omar sees a hand that he does not like here.
So that answers
He
that
knows that this
question.
Crushing Hammer isn't going to have a large impact, since Sebastian has so many energies on his field and in his hand with that Aromatisse. Very
We were
good
wondering
start.
where the rest of his energies were. We certainly found out.
This actually might be the way that Sebastian wants to draw in this matchup. Drawing all of your energies normally isn't that good of a thing, but knowing
However,
that
here, as long as you have an attacker,
exactly, Exeggutor normally thrives off of denying energy drops on the opponent,
he has 130 HP 90x that can sit up there,
and he
take hits,
retreats
and he has
into
counters
that.
to Burbank.
Exactly. Retreats in that Florges and does the Bright Garden for 100. Very awkward position for Omar to be in here. Lack of a supporter is really going to hurt him.
I'm not sure if he plays a Jirachi in this list.
Oh, there's one on his bench.
There is one on his bench.
I'm not
which
sure if he
means
played the second. Yeah, he used it that first turn to get a Juniper. Oh, there is an Ultra Ball. So if he has
So
the
he
second
will
Jirachi,
Ultra
he could be a lot better off than he was previously.
We'll find out. He does have a Plasma Energy, if I'm not mistaken,
Nope,
so
there's
he'll
a Gen-
probably Red Signal and try to stall here.
He can red signal that Aromatisse. Force his opponent to discard 2 more energies. Yep, and that's exactly what he does.
So that's a good play there. At least we'll force him to lose some of the energy that he has.
Yep.
See the
Unfortunately, his
Spirit Link
opponent will
come
still
down.
be able to use that Bright Garden attack this turn if he wants to. I'd like to see Sebastian use the Fan Club here just to thin his deck out a bit.
Absolutely. See if he realizes that he can play the supporter.
I'm sure he knows he can. He knows that his opponent did not say the word blockade last turn. I think he's just
Water Tree.
content with not using it, though. But if you're in Omar's position here now, you actually only have to discard a couple more energies and you just outright win the game with a blockade.
His field looks a lot weaker, but he definitely has a chance.
If he can draw a supporter.
He's going to have to draw into something. Otherwise, he'll just sit here and sack eggs.
Right. And there's another energy on that Gardevoir. And a knocked out egg. Promotes an egg. Draws an egg.
An egg.
Not the way you want to see this game go. And there's the Mega Gardevoir.
And as the Mega Gardevoir comes down, that's big.
Is
That's
that
an
a
EXP share.
Ah, okay.
So now that's just even one more way to conserve energy.
And a Battle Compressor. Omar attempted to thin his deck out. Maybe he can draw multiple hammers next turn. And deny a play from his opponent.
Or find a sleep flip successfully.
There are a few things he could draw in this situation that would be useful.
There are a
Knows
few
he
things
doesn't
that'll
want to use that
prolong the
trump card
game.
this game. And the Ultra Ball is gone. You see
three
so
dead
many
cards.
energies in Sebastian's discard now. Omar chooses to propagate and passes.
Pass it again.
And one more turn here for Omar.
He did draw a Sycamore. Discarding Spritzy, Max Potion, and a Spirit Link. One other card.
Not the fan club that he never put down. And Flare Drum. He's so
And a
close to
pass.
just locking Sebastian out of the game until that trump card comes down. Assuming he can get it.
Mm-hmm.
He does have another energy in his hand, but perhaps he's afraid that Omar will be able to just enhanced hammer that away. But I don't see a reason not to drop it here. You just need to put it on the correct Pokemon. But he chooses to discard it instead. Interesting.
Okay.
And there is that
Can't-
trump card in his hand now.
See him having more than one energy left in his deck.
No, he has none. Those 3 energies on his field are all that he has left.
And there's the scoop. So Sebastian takes the first one pretty handily. Omar never really able to get anything going. He did have a good chance for a comeback by playing Flare Grunts and discarding energies, but he was unfortunately unable to draw into anything after Ultra Balling for the Genesect. Certainly not the way he wanted to see that game go. Despite how one-sided that game was, I do think Omar has several ways to win that matchup.
Oh, definitely.
Certainly needs.
No, it's definitely not an easy matchup for Omar, but fairy decks are definitely dependent on having energies on the board. If Sebastian prizes a significant number of energy, like we got to see that game, Sebastian was fortunate enough to not have any energies in his prizes. If Sebastian prizes a few energies, or potentially prizes that trump card, prizes the Florges, there are definitely cards that he can end up having in his prize cards that would hurt him significantly in this matchup.
Particularly if he ends up, if Omar is able to maintain a blockade lock and prevent him from trump carding, then between Flare Grunts, Lysanders to Force Retreats, he can get those energies off of the board.
Yep.
It's just a matter of knocking things out before he reattaches
And we see a
them.
mulligan from Sebastian here. Interesting how Sebastian has committed, I believe, 8 slots to his Mega Gardevoir line, and it's more than likely going to be a non-factor in this game.
Which, yet another thing, anytime you play against a deck that locks you out of your ability to draw cards or search for the cards that you need, those dead slots become even more dead, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Definitely more of a hindrance when you draw a card that is absolutely useless for you, which is what Exeggutor often does. I mean, all of your supporters become dead draws as long as you're being blockaded. You end up in a situation where you really just want to top deck energies. Which, fortunately for Sebastian, he was able to do so in his last game.
Certainly awkward to play in a format where two popular decks block both your items and your supporter cards.
Makes it difficult to build a deck.
Don't think
Definitely.
we've ever seen that in this
Nope.
game.
I don't believe there have been very many cards printed that have blocked supporters.
There have been, I'm sure, attacks, but never with the laser combo, with the propagation.
Right. I'm sure they've all
All
been
the-
weak
All the resources
in a similar
that
way to how
Executor
blockade is
has.
weak. Well, and that's a discussion I had yesterday on the stream. We have Executor is a card that's been around for 2.5 years now, and is just now seeing play. And it's because the past two sets have strengthened it so much.
Absolutely.
It's gained a lot of things between gaining
You could now get
the battle
3
compressors.
executes out. with
Battle
the
compressors
play
are
of one
huge.
battle
The Archie
compressor.
combo is huge. Acrobikes are huge. There are definitely a lot of resources that it has now that it didn't have previously.
Absolutely. So many resources to get out exactly what it needs to get the lock going consistently.
So we'll likely see Omar play the VS Seeker here to get that Juniper that he just compressored away.
The addition of VS Seeker also strengthened every deck, but particularly with the combo of Battle Compressor.
Right.
It's just,
Yes, VS Seeker and Trump card are also two very big cards that were printed that help Executor. Tails on that laser could hurt him.
and he has the Vert Bank.
Ooh, unfortunately, it looks like he might be... Yeah, gonna have to see him pass the turn because he has two Executors in his hand. He doesn't really want to...
It's,
Oh, I was mistaken. I thought he had the VS Seeker already. He's in the similar position to what Jim had in his second game against Sebastian, where he's forced to compressor away a Juniper in hopes of getting a VS Seeker to use it. Not a
that
good
is
position to be in.
Not a nice hand. That is very obnoxious for Omar.
Right. Okay.
And after a thorough search, he's going to grab it Xerneas with that Ultra Ball.
It may not matter. He may just be able to manually power this Gardevoir up and start using Shining Wind and running through eggs. It depends on what Omar top decks over the next couple of turns.
Sebastian has a lot of Pokemon that can do exactly 100 damage.
Unfortunately for him, his only supporter option here is to use a Chorus for 2. But he has such a weak hand inherently. He's going to just use the Life Leap here, though. Do 20 damage and heal 20 off. Then he'll take the 30 for poison, puts him up to 40.
So he'll slowly accumulate damage. He'll have to play the Chorus eventually unless he draws into something better.
And a top deck Muscle Band. Actually, that's still good. Muscle Band top deck will allow Omar to be able to blockade for 30. Significantly increases the damage output on that Gardevoir and puts a lot of pressure on it.
So with not much draw to
Okay.
back it up, he does have 2 Executors with energies.
Omar actually has significantly more outs now, though, considering he only has one card in his hand. If he top decks either an Archie, a VS Seeker, or any other draw supporter, he will be able to. And he
He will get
Colress
out of
is under
this.
blockade.
And now we'll see what
And
happens.
we're likely to see a game loss here, unfortunately. He played a Colress while he was blockaded. Yep.
So it looks
I
like
mean-
maybe he'll just lose his hand.
I'm not sure. That's true. I think that it may have just been the top card of his deck. I'm not sure. And I can't tell what's going on.
It doesn't look like they're going to give him a game loss. I think if they were going to do that, they would have gone straight for it.
Right. Right. They just let him put the Mega Gardevoir back into his hand. I mean, it's a bit easier to prove what your hand was when it's one card. Especially if you didn't shuffle and it's right on top. But it should have more than likely been a game loss. Normally in situations like this, if you N or something like that, or if your opponent plays a second supporter and shuffles their hand in, it's normally a game loss. Slightly surprised to not see it happen here. Maybe they left it up to Omar to decide, I'm not sure.
That's very possible. Based on his expression, I could
crushing
tell
hammer.
he didn't particularly want to take a game loss.
And just a blockade for 30. So here we see Sebastian in that situation where if he doesn't draw energies, he could just easily lose this game. But he does top deck the
draw
fairy
energy.
energy, wow. What a fortunate top deck.
And just like that, there's 3 energies on the board.
And we'll have to see if Omar can draw his way out of this. Again, he has multiple outs. He can draw a Verse Seeker, a Juniper, an Archie, an Acrobike into any of those given cards.
Despite Sebastian not having an Aromatisse out, as mentioned previously, it doesn't necessarily matter because
Right.
one of the things that gives Executor a lot of trouble is things that can just do 100 for 3.
And we
Very
see
easy to power up
that
manually.
Xerneas go to sleep off that laser. That could also be very big, denying
See if he
Sebastian the
wakes up.
Geomancy. Ooh, but he wakes up. Things
So-
are definitely going Sebastian's way this game.
So
we
after
see him top
avoiding
deck
a
the Fairy
costly
Garden
mistake,
too. Wow.
he wakes up. So he will be able to bump that Verbank.
Wow. I see no reason not to play the Fairy Garden here, but maybe you're afraid the last card in Omar's hand is just another Verbank? I'm not sure.
Even so, I think getting it out of his hand to prevent an Ultra Ball plays. He has propagation.
Potentially keep his waiting for the map to not die going back in his turn.
And Omar attaches a second Plasma, and we see that he did finally top deck a supporter. So we'll see if Omar can actually do
Alright.
something off of this. Quickly draws into his deck.
Awkwardly has 2 Plasma Energies on his Executor.
And now that Omar's going to compressor away those 2 executes, he'll have access to a lot. Well, he'll have more flexibility in how he's able to play this, since they will have
Did
discarded.
actually not have any eggs in the discard,
Correct.
which means I almost certainly would have played that Fairy Garden.
Denying Omar the prize potentially denied him another supporter as well, but maybe Sebastian just wants to be able to save it so that he can try to dance between his Gardevoirs. Like we said, it wasn't a game loss. I'm not sure as to the reasoning why. It may have been something where the judges left the decision up to Omar and he opted not to take it. But we do not have any sort of confirmation on that. But we're likely to just see a life leap here from this Gardevoir. Until Sebastian's able to draw more energies. But now that Omar has finally gotten out of that horrid situation, he actually will probably be able to take a strong position on this board.
He should be able to take control here. I saw him Battle Compressor, the Flare Grunt.
Right. He also had another Flare Grunt in his hand.
So he'll get 1 energy off of the board.
And we see the blockade for 30.
Now we start playing the game.
And Sebastian gets to finally get rid of that Verbank. And Life Leap. There's a second Muscle Band for Omar. And another Flare
And here
Grunt.
comes the Flare Grunt.
You see how Eggs can be such a controlling deck. Sebastian's entire gameplay now is just draw and either pass or attack depending on if he has energies. And that
Absolutely.
Spritzy top deck's going to be very big. Unless Omar happens to
It's
have
very
like a
helpful.
Lysander and a Laser, but I don't believe he plays Lysander since he has that Genesect.
He did hit a hammer off the bike.
Heads.
And he'll hit it.
3 energies gone in 3 turns.
That's just brutal if you're Sebastian.
And another blockade. Fortunately for Sebastian, he'll be able to Geomancy this turn.
Which is exactly what he's going to do.
But he's already lost a significant number of energies between having to retreat his Gardevoir and all those Flare Grunts and Hammers. Does not have very many left.
He will have at least 2.
And he's likely to lose another one this turn.
I would agree with that.
We see the VS Secret's probably just going to grab the Flare Grunt and discard an energy.
Usually he also put one on his heavily damaged Mega Gardevoir.
Well, you know that Exeggutor decks don't go for a high damage output turn. Yes, they can do 60, but even so, that Gardevoir's not going to die in 1 turn.
He is
But
130.
I believe that was a Tails.
It's a massive HP preventing him from really potentially devastating play if he were easily knocked out.
Right. Well, definitely if Omar was able to do something like,
He could red signal.
right, if he could
potentially,
red signal and discard an energy off the Xerneas in the same turn and knock out the Gardevoir, removing 2
essentially
energies.
winning the game at that point.
Just setting up, maybe he will be able to knock
He
it out at
does
some point with a
punch the
Megalo
Genesect.
Cannon.
Math
Genesect
does
has
add up for it.
some added utility in this matchup since it is a very good secondary attacker. You see Omar discard the Virizion and
Omar sits here
Exeggutor.
blockading over and over again. There's no reason not to attach energy to him.
Now comparing the Slurpuff Swampert version of Exeggutor to this Empoleon version, the Slurpuff version often doesn't have room for Genesect, mainly because you won't have bench space for it. At the same time, you're also forced to remove a lot of your disruption supporters, like the Getsus that Omar plays, or even reduce your Flare Count or Xerosic counts. So while yes, you more than likely will be able to hammer more often, you're also forced to trump card more often, which gives your opponent those access to those resources again. With a list like Omar's and you have this Empoleon instead to just draw through your deck, yes, you have... what it adds for you is more room in your list to add these disruption cards, so you don't have to recycle your disruption, and you're able to actually just lock your opponents out on your first run through your deck.
As you saw with some of the hands he's had, you do sacrifice a bit of consistency.
True.
But in the same vein, when you're able to maintain a blockade lock, you have a lot more wiggle room to get out of draws like that.
Yep.
So a lot of players, I think you'll see opting for the list that has more outs in more different situations rather than a consistent list that is
I believe we
more
saw
of
a
straight
similar
lock.
list, a list similar to Omar's, piloted by Britt Pybus when I think it was Missouri States a couple of weeks ago. So we've seen this deck definitely pop up. I know that Jason Klaczynski and Sammy Sakum are also fans of this version of the deck.
Considering sleep flips, Getsus, flare grunts, hammers, all the different sorts of disruption with red signal, strong secondary attacker, you have to like everything the deck can do.
And having a strong Toad matchup is also a plus. Being resistant to Toad while they're weak to you, while you can remove their energies, and yes, they might be able to remove yours, but you will more consistently be able to remove theirs since they can't play disruption supporters at any point. And they often play a lower energy count, but a lot of Toadless only play 4 double colorless. So once you get rid of those, the game just kind of ends.
All the weakness type advantage that you have, you also have a much stronger chance of breaking their lock than
Exactly.
they have of breaking yours.
Definitely.
So
When they
all in
can't
all,
draw into their hammers, they can't play them. And that keeps your energies around. And when you can play supporters still, it's very easy to draw into your disruption supporters. You don't have to depend on hammers to win you that game.
it's easy to sit here looking at Exeggutor in the finals saying it was a good play for the weekend, but I think it really was one of the stronger plays that they could have made.
Yep,
and
we've
frankly,
seen-
surprised that only one made the cut.
Well, we saw a few anti-Exeggutor decks too, actually, floating around, but it seemed like a lot of people came into this weekend either anticipating playing against it a lot, or they knew that they wanted to play it, which is an interesting shift to see after we'd seen multiple weeks where Toad was 100% the top dog.
Absolutely.
How we've shifted from one type of lock to another. And a heads on a laser flip.
Off of the chest. Okay.
Omar Ultra Balls, there's not really much I assume he's just trying to look and see what's left in his deck. We saw that the second Verbank was in there. And he's going to Flare Grunt?
I would think so. Not sure what they're discussing here.
I think he's... That's true, he could Archie, but his deck size is rather low. That would force him into a trump card in a couple of turns.
As mentioned before, trump card is not a card he wants to play in this matchup.
But he chooses the VS Seeker for the Juniper. And we see just another blockade. And we'll see if this Xerneas can wake up. It does not. So that will deny Sebastian 2 more energies on this field. Yeah, and we just see the Mega Evolution to pass his turn. As Xerneas wakes up in response. A Tails on that hammer. Probably likely to see another Grass go into that Genesect here.
You would think so.
So that it will be able to smack one of these Gardevoirs whenever it comes active.
Absolutely. Okay.
And we see the double propagation. Via Seeker for the Juniper.
And he's going to trump card this
And the
turn.
trump card, there we go. So, I'm actually not sure if I agree with this, knowing that Sebastian is still going to have access to that Xerneas next turn, I believe, unless that's a 6 on the second die. Oh, it is. Okay. I thought he had 80 damage on him, not 100. So never mind. Definitely a good play then. I was going to say it would definitely be a weaker play if his opponent would have access to another Geomancy, but
Obviously, he had to make the play regardless. But he put himself in that position, so he had to know this was coming.
Battle Compressor to immediately throw away the Archies and Empoleon again. And a Flare Gun, giving himself access to that later.
Puts himself in a really solid position here, as he will score the knockout on the Xerneas.
And the blockade to knock out the Xerneas causes his opponent to promote the Gardevoir. So we'll see a brilliant arrow here to knock out this Exeggutor, but there's not much else Sebastian can do. So it's likely that will be his only play.
And it is. Take the prize, and he will draw an energy off the prize.
Interesting to see Omar promote the Genesect. I guess he's just okay with just retreating it,
Yeah,
rather than potentially having to retreat the
he
Exeggutor.
does. He does have the plasma. So we'll see if he has any reason to do
And
that.
he retreats into it.
He'll continue to maintain the lock.
Drops the Execute. Knows that if his opponent doesn't top deck another energy here, he won't be able to attack. Puts a Grass down, preparing for the Megalo Cannon. And Junipers everything away. Discarding that third Plasma energy hurts a little bit, knowing that you won't be able to red signal, but now that you can knock out either Gardevoir, it's okay. And this is a huge laser flip. Or not laser, hammer, sorry. And it's a Tails.
And third time is not a charm there. He missed
Acrobike's
that.
looking for another hammer. Does not get it. The laser's also nice, though. Knocks out the
Yeah,
Fairy
does get
Garden.
the
That's
laser
also
back.
big.
Well, that's a very strong draw.
And we see Executor again going to set up his blockade. Fortunately,
Looks like he
Sebastian did
drew-
hit an energy off of that Executor he knocked out off that prize. So he will be able to Brilliant Arrow here if he wants to.
Should keep him in the game.
But unfortunately, if he does that, he's going to have all of his energies removed by this Genesect.
Well, it's just going to come in there and smack him.
Knock out the Gardo or remove 3 energies from his field. Actually be a situation where Omar wants to break his blockade lock.
Mm-hmm. That weak of a field.
It's
The one turn
definitely-
of a Waban supporter
Yeah,
isn't going to
being able to play a supporter for a
advantage.
turn is definitely something you would be willing to give your opponent in exchange for getting rid of all of their energies.
Wiping all the energy off the field is definitely the strongest play.
And
He's
Sebastian just
gonna
scoops
scoop,
knowing that that's likely to happen.
and that's a good scoop because that game could have dragged on for a lot longer.
130 on it, so he's going to be able to kill it with
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even have to use it. 10 seconds. Nice.
So that was definitely the strategy Omar was going for, executed a lot more efficiently that time. He did have to top deck a Juniper to draw out of a very bad situation, so we'll see. See if he can consistently get the setup again.
Plenty of time left in this round. Can only assume that Sebastian's going to want to choose to go first in this game. Give himself the opportunity to build up as many energies as he possibly can. I haven't seen many situations where people would actually opt to go second, but I'm sure it does
very rare.
happen. Yes, top 8 is timed. Most Top Cut games are 75 minutes. There are some situations where they are given 60 minutes instead. I've actually played in tournaments where top 8 was only given 45 minutes to try to play 3 games. That is absolutely
yeah.
absurd.
And a bunch of Pokemon.
I think he's okay with this, though. He opens with multiple basics. He has, I believe, 3 Xerneas in his opening hand. But I
We'll
don't...
get an extra mulligan draw.
As long as he draws an energy, he'll be happy with this. You know that if you're in Sebastian's shoes, though, you got to be wondering, you know, if I don't draw a supporter or an energy, am I going to be able to do anything with this hand?
Otherwise, he has a handful of Pokemon. Literally 7 of them. He'll get 2 free cards that should help him. He'll get to see 3 new ones. The good news too is he does play Chorus, so with
True.
that big of a bench,
True.
if that is the one supporter he draws into, he will have a little bit more of an out. And there's another mulligan.
Well, these Executor decks don't exactly play a large number of basic Pokemon. They normally play 3 to 4 Executes. We see that Omar opted for 4. They play a Jirachi. We see Omar has the Virizion and the Genesect. And believe he has a Mr. Mime as well.
It's certainly not common to see this many mulligans, but not wholly surprising.
Right.
And it certainly should help Sebastian out a lot. And there's
Another mulligan. Wow. Well, this will definitely allow Sebastian to draw out of this interesting hand. It's likely that he'll get a supporter or an energy off of these 4 cards, plus his top deck.
For the record, the only reason I put this one up is that it mutes when you lift it.
So Omar finally gets a basic.
He definitely drew a Sycamore off of those mulligan cards. And another one.
Now we see a Fairy Garden. We see a Sycamore.
And we're going to see.
Having double Xerneas is very strong here.
Absolutely no.
He has, is that 3 Sycamores in his hand now?
Importantly, is that 2 Aromatisse in his hand?
No, no, he does not have 2 Aromatisse.
It's Spritzy.
It
and
is. He had
Aromatisse.
3 Sycamores, wow.
That is, in an odd way, kind of nice.
And he hits an energy. Now, an interesting thought would be, should he have actually put that energy down? I mean, yes, it's okay because he has a second one in his hand, but
Be worried
do you
about
want to
the-
hold it just in case it gets discarded, knowing
So
that
he'd
you...
probably be worried about the hammer play more than anything,
Right.
knowing that he'd prefer to play.
I mean,
a
likely
different
it's
supporter.
okay to put it down just because you have a backup, but I wonder if Sebastian would have played it if he hadn't drawn an extra basic energy.
Right. Well, as we discussed, part of the reason to go first was the first energy drop. So you have to think if you're going first with Xerneas, you want to get the energy drop down,
Right.
make him play the card. So he did have the third round, that's not to play it.
Well, he knows he needs to get more basics out here. I actually didn't see what else is in Omar's hand, so I'm not sure if he's going to potentially try to go for an Archie play here. But it looks like he wants the Jirachi for a supporter. Get that Juniper probably. No, instead he grabs the Genesect. Maybe he wants to red signal up that Spritzy. Force his
Okay.
opponent to have another energy. Knowing that his opponent discarded an Aromatisse, he won't potentially have access to that. Grabs the
Yeah, go for
Gardevoir
the
instead. That's
Gardevoir.
interesting.
He has a Juniper. And we'll play it. Knowing that he had the Juniper, I think that's a pretty good play.
Now, Igor, you're correct that he did want to put it down to try to make Omar waste resources, but the question is more of, would he have wanted to put it down if he didn't have an extra energy to attach the next turn, assuming it would get discarded?
Had he not had another energy in his hand and that energy was discarded,
He would be in a very rough position right now with his Gardevoir active. He wouldn't have access to Geomancy unless he gets another Aromatisse.
which means he was completely banking on Omar opting for a different supporter, which
Right.
he ended up doing.
This is a big sleep flip, but it fails. That Gardevoir staying asleep would have denied Sebastian a lot of energy on his field.
Definitely. So Omar does already have a muscle band and another Juniper, so
Escape rope.
haven't seen that yet in this game.
Now he didn't even need to do that energy. But we're likely to just see the attachment to a Gardevoir and a Geomancy onto the other Gardevoir, or onto the same Gardevoir rather, and the other Xerneas. And I'll probably... Oh goodness, it's hard to say what he's going to do when I can't see the cards in his hand.
Absolutely. He has a Lysander. It's really
That's
all
not
that's
really going to
visible.
do anything for you here.
Not so
Maybe
much.
use Lysander of the Genesect and force it to retreat, but
Which is what
I guess
will
when he
do.
doesn't have access to other supporters, that is what you do. So
I suppose so. There won't be much use for him later in the game.
and we see that he has another Aromatisse in his deck. Also see, it looks like he prized a few energies this game. See, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Never mind.
Which can be frustrating, but actually will help him when he takes
I
prizes.
think he might actually only have 1 fairy in his prizes right now. If I just counted that correctly, I think he had 7 in his deck.
The benefit of having extra energy in the prize is why you might not be able to Geomancy them. You'll be able to draw them as long as you can take prizes.
Right, right. But if you don't have the energies to attack, you won't be able to do those attacks to take those prizes. So it's
So, strange situation. Depends on how the game plays out, but got
So we'll probably see Omar use that Ultra Ball to grab a Jirachi to get his supporter this turn. Never mind, he has another Juniper.
He does.
I'm not used to playing with these full art cards. I don't have enough money for that.
I'm with you.
So instead we'll see him grab an Exeggutor here. Wants to keep that shiny egg on the table, let the stream bask in its glory.
Absolutely. To show off. Look at him.
We're seeing attachment and a Juniper.
Sebastian can do nothing but laugh at that play, as he knows Omar's doing exactly what he wants to do right now.
Having a Verbank there is very good for him, being able to knock out the Fairy Garden. Unfortunately for Omar, I don't believe he drew any hammers off of that. I'm not sure if Omar has a third card he really wants to get with that Battle Compressor, because he wants to have access to those Acro Bikes. I believe it's Zerosic. Yeah, he just discarded off the Ultra Ball for the Exeggutor. Didn't really have anything else he wanted to get rid of.
The Acro Bike.
We see, I believe that one of those cards was, nope, I thought that was an Acro Bike. Laser,
okay.
okay.
Laser
And he plays the Laser. Tails again.
Whips the sleep.
Oh, we see an N in Sebastian's hand, but he won't be able to play it.
And with
So he
possibility of
really
red
needs an
signal via
Aromatisse
Seeker.
here.
He definitely does, and now that he's
But
locked.
he's likely to just Geomancy and build up energies on his field. Gives Omar an awkward position where he's actually forced to remove energies from the bench rather than the active. Because as soon as that Gardevoir comes up, it's able to just repeatedly knock out Exeggutors.
That's correct. Luckily for him, he does have 2 VS Seekers in his hand.
Right. And Omar might be forced to red signal around the Xerneas here, not wanting to knock it out. Could bring up the other Xerneas and then VS Seeker for the Flare Grunt, discard the energy off of it and blockade. Since Sebastian's pulled so many energies out of his deck, he has much lower odds of drawing one, but instead he opts to take the prize. Interesting.
I see why. I couldn't argue with a red signal, and I think overall it might have been a better play.
I definitely think red signaling the other Xerneas may have been stronger unless he really knows that there's something that he wants out of his prizes. But instead we see...
Just see him knock out the Exeggutor.
What is that card? What is that attack called? Is it Shining Glory or something? Shining Wind?
Gleam or something.
Yeah. So we see a Shining Wind for 100. Importantly, it no longer has weakness. Very relevant in this matchup.
Incredibly important. That could swing things.
So we see that Plasma come down. We see a Juniper. Has to hope to hit an Exeggutor and a Hammer.
That also appears to be 3 VS Seekers. So he did get the Exeggutor. He does have an Acro Bike. Checking his discard as there is an Exeggutor as part of that Acro Bike draw. I'll discard the Hammer with the bike. The other card in that pair was Exeggutor, and based on what he saw in his discard, he must have thought the Exeggutor was the better choice.
Very unfortunate for him.
Any other card, he would have taken the Hammer.
And we're going to just see a blockade here, probably followed up by a quick Shining Wind. Just debating whether or not he wants to attach a Muscle Band. Chooses to. Oh, and he top decks another energy too. Wow. See a Spirit Link go on the bench.
He'll just take another easy knockout.
Another Juniper for Omar. But unfortunately, I don't think he can afford to do it here because he has his last VS Seeker and his trump card in his hand. So he's almost in a situation where he's
That
forced
is
to trump
Just
and give his
really
opponent
a
access to
rough
supporters
hand
for a
to have.
turn, which would just allow Sebastian to blow this game wide open. So we'll see a
Much like in the first
propagation.
game, he's going to have to sack eggs, try to get back into it.
Yep, and we'll see him take all of those eggs back into his hand. So he's going to do that trump card play more than likely. Probably play a VS Seeker, take maybe a Flare Gun out of his discard pile before he does it.
Which he looks like he will do. He might just play the grunt.
But even if he does that, he doesn't have an energy to blockade.
So
So his opponent would have access to supporters anyway. So even playing the grunt, it doesn't really change anything.
Absolutely, and he still would have had to trump card the following turn.
Right. And he's forced into a position where, yes, if he makes the grunt play, he has to give up his blockade lock for at least 2 turns then. Unless he top decks an energy.
As if it's not already in a bad enough position for him, giving up the supporter for an extra turn.
And a pass.
The Gardevoir, thankfully for him, at least is still poisoned.
True. But now Sebastian can easily just flood his field. I'm surprised he wouldn't bench another Pokemon before he plays that Colress.
I agree. But then again, he has to assume when the execute dies, he can just propagate again. I suppose there's no reason not to propagate.
And a Fairy Garden. So now the threat of that Gardevoir being knocked out is completely removed. And we see another Shining Wind.
He obviously won't have access to Red Signal.
But he does have a Burbank.
Discarding Gaxus and Flare Grunt with that Juniper.
We need to see Omar draw something like 3 hammers here. Maybe 4.
He does.
One thing that's hurt Omar this series is we have yet to see him actually successfully get that Empoleon onto his bench. Not having access to Diving Draw hasn't helped him one bit. And going back to the play where Omar opted to knock out the Xerneas, I still will stand by the fact that I think he should have pulled up the other Xerneas, or sorry, either the other Xerneas or the Spritzy and not knocked it out. Because I believe at that point the other Xerneas didn't have any energies on it. It would have put Sebastian in a position where he had to top deck an energy to do anything.
And I agree with that because given where his board state has ended up, where he was at the time, I think it would have helped him get more of a solid field. And
Right.
not even more of the field, but a better chance to get his field to a point where he could play the Flare Grunts.
Right. Instead of being forced to constantly
to
draw
jump every
into
turn.
energies or Pokemon. It would also have a secondary effect. He'd have energies on his Genesect to potentially attack with it if he needed to.
Right. Which in that case, a Red Signal knockout of a Gardevoir still knocks off 3 energies.
Yep.
It still has no Aromatisse down.
And another Gardevoir comes down. Sebastian opts not to attach there, interestingly.
So the double Executor drop.
And another laser
Cannot
fail.
find a Sleep Heads.
And we see another
Again,
Juniper this turn.
Again, forced to Juniper.
Because he needs an energy to do that blockade.
He will find one.
He has those two Acrobikes to potentially get some hammers.
He will play them.
Discards a Zerosic and a Grass Energy, I'm not sure. Oh, he kept one Acrobike, that was one of the cards. Discards Jirachi.
Finds a
Keeps
VS
a VS
Seeker.
Seeker, and the other card was a Muscle Band, it looks like. And, I mean, I don't know what else Omar can really do here besides go for that Sleep Flip. Hope Sebastian doesn't have the Mega Gardevoir in his hand, which I don't believe he does.
I think he does go for the flip, and he will. And
And
he will
it-
finally hit one.
So, if that Gardevoir stays asleep, things could definitely turn around for Omar here.
Absolutely.
Oh, but he top decks the Ultra Ball to go find the Mega Gardevoir, so it doesn't matter.
And he wakes up anyway.
We'll go see him find that Mega here. And I think that pretty much seals things up.
It has to be an outrageous string of luck in order for him to get back into this game.
Definitely, especially considering the fact that I think he has 3 lasers in his discard already at the moment. He would
Already
have to
6, 7 energies on the board.
He would have to hit a 4th laser. He would have to hammer away all of the energies off of the benched Gardevoir, and the
Despite
active
that,
Mega Gardevoir would have to stay asleep. It's very unlikely for that to all happen.
And even so, chances are he'll draw into an Aromatisse eventually, and
Right.
it won't matter at all.
And unfortunately for Omar here, he's forced to Juniper again, because he has to remove 2 energies for the field for it to really have any impact.
He'll use the grunt.
I don't know why he would do that, since Sebastian could just retreat the Gardevoir.
There's
Or
absolutely no
attach.
point.
That works too.
Um,
And congratulations
So,
to
that's gonna do
Sebastian, winning our finals 2-1.
really interesting matchup that we got to see in the finals.
And we'll see if we can get Sebastian over here to talk to him. But until then, we will be right back. And congratulations to Sebastian, winning our finals 2-1.
Really interesting matchup that we got to see in the finals.
And we'll see if we can get Sebastian over here to talk to him. But until then, we will be right back. So I'm here with Sebastian. First, congratulations to you for winning states. It's a
Thank
big
you.
accomplishment. We had some stream questions come up. First, we want to know what the favorite card in your deck is, if you have one.
I mean, if we're talking looks, Mega Gardevoir, play, I think Florges is really clutch.
Okay. Okay. Who was your toughest opponent and what deck were they playing?
Toughest opponent, I think, would have to be a Toad Garbodor player. It was like round 5, I think.
Okay.
And
Just locking you out of your abilities and denying energy.
yeah, because I had an experience share that I got down early on my Aromatisse, so every time something would die, I would XP share, but I couldn't move the energy because of
Right.
Garbodor, so it was rough having to try and draw the energies.
Okay. Yeah, I know that that's something we noticed in your matchup against Omar is that it's a similar situation where you just are forced into a position where you need to draw energy to do something.
Yeah.
And we saw in that first game, you had nothing but energies, so it worked out
Yeah.
very well for you.
Yeah, that was good.
Somebody else wants to know, what future tournaments will you attend? Do you have any plans to go to something, maybe Georgia Regionals, Nationals, Worlds?
Definitely plan on going to Georgia Regionals.
Okay.
I feel obligated to go to Nationals now.
How many points are you at right now?
I had 30 before this. I don't know how many I
I
get
think
from
it's.
this.
I think you got 100 for first at
Okay.
state, so I think you're at 130
So,
now.
Yeah.
Okay. Personal question. What do you think? Well, not personal for you, but what do you think this new set is going to bring to the format? The Roaring Skies.
I think it's going to bring a lot to the metagame. I think fast decks are going to really get big. A lot of aggro stuff that just kind of swarms. and
Right.
Evolves fast with Wally, stuff like that.
Okay.
I think swarm decks are probably going to be pretty big.
Okay. Now, because of, and I assume that's mainly because of things like Shaman.
Yeah.
And